Qui nella prima fila sono posti liberi, quindi non esitate di venire anche davanti e prendere i posti nella prima fila. Here in front are the places free. Don't hesitate to come and take these places. Vpredu, v prvej rade máme ešte voľné miesta, teda nebojte sa prísť aj dopredu a obsadiť miesta v prvej rade. Cari amici, approfittiamo l'occasione che non abbiamo ancora i nostri ospiti che ci parleranno all'inizio e vi do adesso alcune informazioni tecniche. Abbiamo una traduzione simultanea. Abbiamo una traduzione simultanea in 3 lingue. Canale 1 è slovacco, canale 3 italiano, canale 5 inglese. Un altro avviso, si è trovato questo cellulare, a chi appartiene? Molto veloce. Questo nostro programma sarà trasmesso, per la vostra informazione, anche tramite internet, quindi potete avvisare ai vostri amici, i vostri conosciuti che possono collegarsi con questo evento. Tutto quello che si svolgerà nella sala sarà trasmesso via internet. Tutti i materiali, i discorsi, i video che sono stati prodotti dalla Conferenza Episcopale Slovacca per questo evento, per le tematiche di questo evento, saranno pubblicati sulla pagina web delle giornate sociali, che è catholicsocialdays.eu. catholicsocialdays.eu, lo vedete anche dietro di me. Adesso aspetteremo l'arrivo dei nostri interlocutori, presidenti dei organismi che stanno organizzando queste giornate sociali e anche la Presidente della Repubblica Slovacca. Come? Sì, sì, sì. Sarà con lei. Già in anticipo posso dirvi che i discorsi dell'apertura saranno in 3 lingue e io parlerò in tutte le 3 lingue a dipendenza quale lingua ha scelto l'interlocutore che parlerà. Possono scendere? Già vi dato. Questo è del protocollo del Presidente. C'è stato con uno di loro in contatto. Ok. No, pausa caffè qui. Davanti. Pausa caffè qui davanti. Onorevole Presidente della Repubblica Slovacca, signora Zuzana Čaputová, reverendissime eminenze, cardinali Černý e Holerič, reverendissime eccellenze, cari confratelli nel sacerdozio, cari partecipanti alla terza edizione delle giornate sociali cattoliche europee radunati qui a Bratislava e collegati da tutta l'Europa tramite internet. Sono lieto che dopo quasi 2 anni e mezzo dei lavori preparativi svolti tra i segretariati della Conferenza Episcopale Slovacca, della Commissione delle Conferenze Episcopali dell'Unione Europea e del Consiglio delle Conferenze Episcopali d'Europa e in collaborazione con il Dicastero per la promozione dello sviluppo umano integrale possiamo adesso ascoltare le parole di saluto e di introduzione alle giornate sociali dalla parte di quelli che presiedono gli organismi protagonisti di questo evento e della Presidente della Repubblica Slovacca. Questi saluti saranno rivolti nelle 3 lingue ufficiali del Congresso, inglese, italiano e slovacco. Ogni interlocutore sarà introdotto da parte mia nella lingua in cui parlerà. Ako prvý sa nám prihovorí jeho excelencia monsignor Stanislav Zvolenský, arcibiskup metropolita Bratislavy a predseda konferencie biskupov Slovenska, ktorý je zároveň hostiteľom ako diecézny biskup a ako predseda biskupskej konferencie Slovenska. Nech sa páči.
Eminencie, excelencie, vážená pani prezidentka, milí priatelia, dámy a páni, dovoľte mi privítať vás v mene Konferencie biskupov Slovenska na podujatí, ktoré organizujeme spoločne s Radou biskupských konferencií Európy a Komisiou biskupských konferencií Európskej únie, a ktoré nesie názov 3. Európske katolícke sociálne dni. Schádzame sa v hlavnom meste Slovenska, v Bratislave, aby sme hovorili o novom začiatku, o Európe za hranicami pandémie. Chceme v týchto dňoch uvažovať nad tým, ako môžu kresťania účinne napomáhať solidarite a sociálnej spravodlivosti v európskej spoločnosti. Zároveň je toto naše stretnutie neplánovane poznačené udalosťami, ktoré sledujeme na Ukrajine. Téma vojnového konfliktu a jeho dôsledkov, predovšetkým zo sociálneho hľadiska, z pohľadu prijatia a pomoci trpiacím, z pohľadu konkrétnej kresťanskej solidarity sa v tomto ohľade stala mimoriadne aktuálnou. Včera sme naše podujatie otvorili duchovne, bohoslúžbou v katedrále svätého Martina. Jej súčasťou bola aj modlitbová procesia so sviečkami na vyjadrenie našich prosieb všemohúcemu Bohu o spravodlivosť a pokoj. O mier na Ukrajine, o pokoj na celom svete. V tomto duchu modlitby a prosby o Božie milosrdenstvo chceme pokračovať aj počas celého nášho európskeho stretnutia tu v Bratislave. Zároveň chceme v tomto našom priestore uvažovať nad novými iniciatívami, ktoré budú potrebné, aby sme do života kresťanských spoločenstiev konkrétnym spôsobom uvádzali posolstvo evanjelia. Veľmi srdečne vás teda vítam. Všetkých ctených hostí, delegátov biskupských konferencií, prednášajúcich odborníkov z prostredia cirkvi aj občianskej spoločnosti, účastníkov tu v sále, ako aj tých, ktorí ste s nami spojení prostredníctvom internetového vysielania. Je pred nami niekoľko intenzívnych dní, ktoré iste prinesú cenné podnety pre naše európske spoločenstvo. Vzhľadom na to, že toto podujatie konáme v Bratislave, zvolili sme preň logo, ktoré vyjadruje spojenie miestneho cirkevného spoločenstva so svätým Martinom, je patrónom bratislavskej arcidiecézy. Azda najčastejšie zobrazovaná scéna z jeho života ho ukazuje ešte ako vojaka, ktorý sa delí s chudobným, uzímeným človekom o plášť. Nie je mu ľahostajná bieda, vnímajú a neváha konkrétnym spôsobom prejaviť lásku. Nemá nič navyše, no delí sa s tým, čo má, aby zmiernil utrpenie. Nelipne na svojom pohodlí, keď vidí brata v Kristovi, ktorý je v núdzi. Neskôr vo sne spoznáva, že ten, ktorému prejavil milosrdenstvo, bol samotný Ježiš Kristus, Syn Boží, ktorý sa stal človekom, aby nás vykúpil. Tento obraz je veľmi aktuálny aj pre našu súčasnú situáciu. Stoja pred nami výzvy, ktoré si budú žiadať, aby sme konkrétnym spôsobom konali, aby sme sa podelili, aby sme nechceli za každú cenu brániť svoje pohodlie, keď vidíme utrpenie druhých. Zároveň ako veriaci kresťania nesmieme v snahe o konkrétnu pomoc zabudnúť na duchovnú oblasť, na službu Bohu, ktorá nášmu úsiliu dáva konečný cieľ a zmysel. Stoja pred nami výzvy, ktoré si vyžadujú jedno i druhé. V duchu povzbudení svätého otca Františka sa chceme nepoddať kultúre nezáujmu, ale budovať kultúru, ktorá slúži životu, ktorá je inšpirovaná evanjelium a všíma si aj toho najbiednejšieho. Nikoho neskartuje, nikoho nenecháva pozadu. Verím, že nasledujúce dni nám ponúknú dobrú príležitosť pre napredovanie na tejto ceste, na ktorej nech nás vedie a sprevádza náš Pán. Ďakujem pekne za vašu pozornosť.
Ďakujeme pekne pánovi arcibiskupovi za tieto privítacie slova ako hostiteľa nášho podujatia. Adesso ascolteremo il messaggio del Santo Padre Francesco che verrà letto da Monsignor Andriy Jevčuk, chargé d'affaires della Nunciatura in Slovacchia.
Al caro fratello Monsignor Gintaras Grušas, arcivescovo di Vilnius e presidente del CCE. In occasione della terza edizione delle giornate sociali cattoliche europee organizzate dalla CCE insieme con la Comese e alla conferenza episcopale slovacca a Bratislava dal 17 al 20 marzo, desidero rivolgere a lei, caro fratello, e a tutti i partecipanti il mio cordiale saluto. Ciò che stiamo vivendo in queste ultime settimane non è quello che speravamo dopo la difficile emergenza sanitaria provocata dalla pandemia, che ci ha fatto sperimentare un segno di impotenza e di timore, assieme alla condizione di fragilità della nostra esistenza. La tragedia della guerra che si sta consumando nel cuore dell'Europa ci lascia attoniti. Mai avremmo pensato di rivedere simili scene che ricordano i grandi conflitti bellici del secolo scorso. Il grido straziante di aiuto dei nostri fratelli ucraini si spinge come comunità di credenti non solo a una seria riflessione, ma a piangere con loro e a darci da fare per loro, a condividere l'angoscia di un popolo ferito nella sua identità, nella sua storia e tradizione. Il sangue e le lacrime dei bambini, le sofferenze di donne e uomini che stanno difendendo la propria terra o scappano dalle bombe scuotono la nostra società. Ancora una volta l'umanità è minacciata da un abuso perverso del potere e degli interessi di parte, che condanna la gente indifesa a subire ogni forma di brutale violenza. Ringrazio a tutti, cari fratelli nell'Episcopato, che per la sollecita e corale risposta nel soccorrere quella popolazione, garantendole aiuti materiali, accoglienza e ospitalità. Non stanchiamoci in questo e non cessiamo di invocare a Dio e dagli uomini la pace. Vi esorto pertanto a continuare a pregare, affinché quanti detengono le sorti delle nazioni non lasciano nulla di intentato per fermare la guerra e aprire un dialogo costruttivo per porre fine all'immane tragedia umanitaria che sta provocando. Oggi, più che mai, urge rivedere lo stile dell'efficacia dell'ars politica. Davanti ai tanti mutamenti a cui stiamo assistendo a livello internazionale, è doveroso rendere possibile lo sviluppo di una comunità mondiale capace di realizzare la fraternità a partire da popoli e nazioni che vivono l'amicizia sociale. La guerra che lascia il mondo peggiore ed è un fallimento della politica e dell'umanità, una resa vergognosa alle forze del male. Possa suscitare in questo senso una reazione di segno opposto, un impegno di rifondare un'architettura di pace a livello globale, dove la Casa Europea nata per garantire la pace dopo le guerre mondiali abbia un ruolo primario. Il titolo che avete scelto per queste giornate, l'Europa oltre la pandemia, un nuovo inizio, invita a riflettere sulle transizioni in atto nella società europea. Questo tempo ancora condizionato dalla pandemia ha provocato notevoli cambiamenti sociali, economici, culturali e anche ecclesiali. In questa situazione segnata dalla sofferenza sono cresciute le paure, è aumentata la povertà e si sono moltiplicate le sollecitudini. Mentre tanti hanno perso il lavoro e vivono in modo precario, per tutti è mutato il modo di relazionarsi con gli altri. In tale contesto anche la vita ecclesiale non è stata risparmiata da molteplici difficoltà, specialmente dovute alla limitazione delle attività pastorali. Non possiamo starcene con le mani in mano. Come cristiani e come cittadini europei siamo chiamati ad attuare con coraggio quanto disse uno dei grandi padri fondatori della comunità europea, Alcide De Gasperi, parlando del bene comune delle nostre patrie europee, della nostra patria Europa. Sì, l'Europa e le nazioni che compongono non si oppongono tra loro e costruire il futuro non significa uniformarsi, ma unirsi ancora di più nel rispetto delle diversità. Per i cristiani ricostruire la casa comune vuol dire farsi artigiani di comunione, tessitori di unità di ogni livello, non per strategia, ma per Vangelo. In altre parole, occorre risparmiare dal cuore stesso del Vangelo. Gesù Cristo è il suo amore che salva. Questo è l'annuncio sempre nuovo da portare al mondo, anzitutto attraverso la testimonianza di vite che mostrino la bellezza dell'incontro con Dio e dell'amore per il prossimo. Lo esprime bene l'immagine che avete scelto come logo di queste giornate, quella di San Martino di Tours, che taglia in due il suo mantello per donarlo a un povero. Essa ricorda che l'amore e prossimità concreta condivisione, cura per l'altro. Chi ama supera la paura e la differenza nei confronti di quanti si affacciano alle nostre frontiere in cerca di una vita migliore. Sa accogliere, proteggere, accompagnare e integrare tanti fratelli e sorelle che scappano dai conflitti, carestia e povertà, è doveroso e umano, ancor più è cristiano. Si trasformino i muri ancora presenti in Europa in porte di accesso al suo patrimonio di storia, di fede, di arte e cultura. Si promuovono il dialogo e l'amicizia sociale perché cresca una convivenza umana fondata sulla fraternità. Affido, caro fratello, i vostri lavori alla materna intercessione della Madre della Chiesa e Regina della Pace e alla protezione delle sante e dei santi patroni d'Europa. Vi benedico di cuore e vi chiedo, per favore, di continuare a pregare per me. Roma, San Giovanni Lateranum, 15 marzo 2022. Francesco.
We listen now to the address of His Excellency Monsignor Ginteras Grušas, President of the Council of the European Bishops' Conferences. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Madam President, Your Eminences, Your Excellencies, dear Reverend Fathers, brothers and sisters in Christ, as we begin these social days, we must first acknowledge the long journey we have taken to get here. Not so much in distance, but in the time and circumstances of the pandemic we are still living through and the effect that it had on all our lives, communities, and on the Church itself. The joy of at least part of the participants to be able to come together here in Bratislava, while many others join the process through the internet transmission of our proceedings. My sincere thanks to all those who have worked here in Bratislava and throughout Europe in planning these social days over the past years. Having chosen the title for these days as Europe Beyond the Pandemic, a New Beginning, we embark with the hope of helping one another find a path on which we can assist in the renewal of the Church in Europe and of our European society. A hope that has been challenged even more in the last weeks with the outbreak of war on the European continent. The challenges before us are great, but our coming together to pray, to analyze the current situation, and to look for solutions is at an appropriate moment. The pandemic has caused much pain, confusion, and the loss of many loved ones, at times increased division in society and in our communities, but beyond the virus itself, it brought into clarity various problems that had been festering for some time. At the dawn of the new millennium, Pope John Paul II, in his post-synodal apostolic exhortation, Ecclesia in Europa, wrote, "In connection with the spread of individualism, we see an increased weakening of interpersonal solidarity. While charitable institutions continue to carry out praiseworthy work, one notes a decline in the sense of solidarity, with the result that many people, while not lacking material necessities, feel increasingly alone, left to themselves without structures of affection and support. At the root of this loss of hope is an attempt to promote a vision of man apart from God and apart from Christ. This sort of thinking has led to man being considered as the absolute center of reality, a view which makes him occupy falsely the place of God and which forgets that it is not man who creates God, rather God who creates man. Forgetfulness of God led to the abandonment of man. It is therefore no wonder that in this context a vast field has opened for the unrestrained development of nihilism in philosophy, of relativism in values and morality, and a pragmatism and even a cynical hedonism in daily life. European culture gives the impression of silent apostasy on the part of people who have all that they need and who live as if God does not exist. As the pandemic spread, we all remember Pope Francis's Statio Orbis on March 27, 2020, with the iconic image of the Holy Father alone in an empty St. Peter's Square, interceding for the world before God and entrusting us to the Blessed Mother. During his address, he noted how the virus had exposed the shortcomings of our own society today. He said, "The storm exposes our vulnerability and uncovers those false and superfluous certainties around which we have constructed our daily schedules, our projects, our habits and priorities. It shows us how we are allowed to become dull and feeble, the very things that nourish, sustain, and strengthen our lives and our communities. The tempest lays bare all our prepackaged ideas and forgetfulness of what nourishes our people's souls, all those attempts that anesthetize us with ways of thinking and acting that supposedly save us, but instead prove incapable of putting us in touch with our roots and keeping alive the memory of those who have gone before us. We deprive ourselves of the antibodies we need to confront adversity." Pope Francis himself took the lead in reminding us what needs to be done to recover from the effects of the pandemic in a series of catecheses given between August 5th and September 30th, 2020, entitled "Healing the World." He himself summarized the teachings at the beginning of the final catechesis, saying, "In recent weeks, we have reflected together in the light of the Gospels on how to heal the world that is suffering from a malaise that has been highlighted and accentuated by the pandemic. The malaise was already there. The pandemic highlighted it more. It accentuated it. We have walked the paths of dignity, solidarity, and subsidiarity, paths that are essential to promote human dignity and the common good. And as disciples of Jesus, we have proposed to follow in his steps, opting for the poor, rethinking the use of material goods, and taking care of our common home. In the midst of the pandemic that afflicts us, we anchored ourselves to the principles of the social doctrine of the Church, allowing ourselves to be guided by faith, by hope, and by charity. Here we found solid help so as to be transformers who dream big, who are not stopped by the meanness that divides and hurts, but who encourage the generation of a new and better world. Several days later, he published his encyclical, Letter Fratelli Tutti, containing a synthesis and compendium of the teaching of what we must do in order to heal the world, to heal our European continent. There he wrote, "The brutal and unforeseen blow of this uncontrolled pandemic forced us to recover our concern for human beings, for everyone, rather than for the benefit of a few. Today we can recognize that we fed ourselves on dreams of splendor and grandeur and ended up consuming distraction, insularity, and solitude. We gorged ourselves on networking and lost the taste of fraternity. We looked for quick and safe results, only to find ourselves overwhelmed by impatience and anxiety. Prisoners of a virtual reality, we lost the taste and flavor of the truly real. The pain, uncertainty, and fear, and the realization of our own limitations brought on by the pandemic have only made it all the more urgent that we rethink our styles of life, our relationships, the organization of our societies, and above all, the meaning of our existence. We must begin the work of rebuilding our society. We must begin the work of re-evangelizing the baptized, who have been lulled away by the comforts of modern society into a belief that man can do it on his own and only when he feels helpless turns to God for help. The Holy Father has already outlined for us the path, but we must adopt it concretely for our situation today on the European continent. Our response must be Christ-centered. Whether we are discussing demographic changes and family challenges, developments in technology and digital transitions, or the recovery of our environment. Our call is to renew all these things in Christ, for He alone is our hope and the hope of Europe. Without God at the center of our lives and our work, we would create a social justice system as vacuous as the one that the atheistic communist system attempted to create for their unattainable ideal society. Lord, may everything we do begin with your inspiration, continue with your help, and reach perfection under your guidance. Thank you.
Now we pass to the greeting words of His Eminence, Cardinal Jean-Claude Roderich, President of the Commission of the Bishops' Conferences of the European Union. Your Eminency, the floor is yours.
Madam President, Your Eminence, Your Excellencies, dear delegates of the Bishops' Conferences, dear guests, it is my great pleasure to welcome you today to the third edition of the European Catholic Social Days. Many thanks for joining us from all the countries across Europe, both online and here with us in Bratislava. Looking at Europe beyond the pandemic and towards a new beginning these days will be the occasion to reflect on the importance of solidarity and social justice in a Europe in transition. Of course, the third European Catholic Social Days are taking place today in a completely different context. And while we are talking about solidarity, I wish to reiterate once again our fraternal closeness and solidarity with our sisters and brothers in Ukraine, as well as with those fleeing the horrors of war, while thanking the Church and many volunteers in Ukraine, Slovakia, and other neighboring countries for their humanitarian efforts and pastoral care. We are deeply saddened by the bombing of human corridors, by the besieging of cities, which lead to thirst and hunger, to famine, to diseases and death. As Pope Francis already expressed in Fratelli Tutti, the first victim of every war is the human family's innate vocation to fraternity. This is why during the third edition of the Social Days, I invite you to rediscover together our vocation to fraternity and to reflect and debate on the way forward towards a just recovery in Europe, leaving no one behind. To this reflection, we will aim to contribute to the rebuilding process from a Christian perspective. As you can see on the program, 3 main transitions shall be particularly explored during our social days: the demographic transition and family life, the technological and digital transition, and, last but not least, the ecological transition. One of Pope Francis' dreams for Europe is a Europe that is a family and a community. Answering to Pope Francis' call to rediscover the sense of community, the first community being the family, the first session of the Social Days will approach the issue of the population decline, the growing rural-urban divide in Europe, and the importance of family as the nuclear cell of society. Families provide stability and a nurturing environment to the spouses and their children. When the importance of the family is lost and its institutional protection decreases, the consequences can be felt far and wide. In Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis calls on us to resist against individualism and the throwaway world. Family is the future of Europe and must be supported by adequate social policies to cope with the real demographic winter. Acting as a community means developing a spirit of fraternity and solidarity against individualism and conflicts in order to face together the challenges that Europe faces. Tomorrow, we will discuss the technological and digital transition. Teleworking, enabled by technology, has allowed many workers to maintain their work. At the same time, it strengthened an always-on culture, this blurring the boundaries between work and non-work activities. In addition, there was a substantial increase of platform work during the pandemic. All these developments are shaping the future of work, affecting in particular work content, work organization, job quality, working conditions, and work-life balance. In the past years, the European Union has been very active to accompany the digital transition, and the digital transition is one of the key pillars of the EU recovery plan. Although the digitalization phenomenon has long started, the current transition is characterized by the accelerated development of advanced technologies. However, the benefits of digital technologies, and they are real benefits, are not without risks and costs. In his encyclical letter Laudato Si, Pope Francis insisted that the goal should not be that technological progress increasingly replaces human work, for this would be detrimental to humanity. On the contrary, investments in new technological and scientific knowledge must be placed at the service of mankind's primary needs, gradually increasing humanity's common patrimony. Together, we will engage in a reflection on how the Church, the European Union, and all citizens can take responsibilities and concrete steps to best be part of and accompany the technological and digital transition. Solidarity will be necessary to tackle one of the greatest challenges of our time, climate change. and we should not forget it because there are big crises at our doors. Pope Francis, together with other faith leaders, urged for an ecological conversion. If we do not take this ecological conversion serious, we already plant the seeds of future conflicts and wars. Especially in this Lenten season, we need to experience the conversion, the change of heart to which the Pope invites us. For in the words of the Pope, all of us can cooperate as instruments of God for the care of creation, each according to his or her own culture, experience, involvements, and talents. The ecological transition is also a key pillar of the EU recovery plan, and the European Green Deal is at its heart in order to become the world's first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. Of course, all these plans are endangered by the pandemic, by the war, and the necessary economic recovery. The European Commission has adopted a climate package in July 21, the so-called Fit for 55 package, in reference to the EU's objective of reducing the carbon emissions of at least 55% by 2030. After COP26 in Glasgow, the third session of the Social Days, and particularly the third session tomorrow afternoon, will be the occasion to debate on the urgent need for an ecological conversion and the challenge to shape the transition to the benefit of everybody as one human family, as indicated in Laudato Si. So let me wish you a good start in the third European Catholic Social Days. And let us join Pope Francis' prayers by turning our exchanges to the Lord, Father of our human family, to create healthier societies and a more dignified world. Thank you for your attention.
We are honored to have among us His Eminency Cardinal Michael Czerny, Prefect of the Dicastery for Promotion of Human Integral Development, who is visiting Slovakia also as a delegate of the Holy Father for the emergent situation in Ukraine. Your Eminency, we look forward to hearing you. The floor is yours.
Madam President, dear brothers and sisters, the European Catholic Social Days were initially planned to explore new beginnings in Europe beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, with the hope of learning from the many who suffered and the many who gave so generously of themselves in response. But the war in Ukraine has broken in upon these social days, and Cardinal Krajewski and I have recently gone there from neighboring Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia to embody the presence, as he himself said, the presence not only of the Pope, but of all Christian people who want to draw closer and vigorously to proclaim, war is madness, stop, please, look at this cruelty. You might ask, in Ukraine, did I see the war where missiles fly and bombs fall, the negation of all rights and a dramatic assault on the environment? No, I was just on the western border. Instead, I saw war in another way, in displaced and desperate eyes, in personal and family histories abruptly ended, people who are physically alive but whose life, until now, has violently ended. It is a mirage to endorse war as a valid response to any situation of imbalance or tension. Most often, illegitimate intentions and sordid ulterior motives, such as hegemonic ambitions, abuses of power, and ethnic, racial, or religious prejudices lurk behind the official rationale for war as an effective, reasonable, or unavoidable option. Faced with the barbarism of the killing of children and of innocent and defenseless citizens, there are no strategic reasons that hold up. The only thing to be done is to cease the unacceptable armed aggression, declared Pope Francis at the Angelus last week. Today's military technology includes ultra-sophisticated weapons with unimaginable destructive power. Weapons have become so automated and mechanized that war is often waged by remote control, anonymously, virtually. When a high-tech soldier fires a missile at a hospital or at people fleeing, what does he see on his screen? It just looks like a video game. At the same time, I saw seeds of peace germinating in refugees being welcomed and beginning to breathe and to hope again. The care they received from volunteers and aid workers is a praxis of love. On Sunday, the Holy Father again urged the welcoming of the many refugees in whom Christ is present, and giving thanks for the great networks of solidarity that have formed. You may know that as a young boy, I too was a refugee as my family fled Czechoslovakia in the late 1940s. Thanks to the practical love shown to us, we were able to find new life. But besides individual Samaritans, how does peace operate at the level of groups, especially in and by states? Half a century ago, Gaudium et Spes explained that peace is a responsibility that belongs to the entire human family, called to become the family of God. Pope Francis's frequent invitation to fraternity is founded on this conviction. All of humanity, from individuals to states and multinational entities, must direct history towards the realization of peace. This is an objective for everyone, though it acquires a particular importance for Christians, since it means showing the world the life-saving work of Christ. Today, the war in Ukraine makes it imperative for each and every European, whether Christian or not, whether believer or not, to commit to a true peace that permits all to flourish, to achieve their integral human development and nothing less. We are living in a world war fought piecemeal. Globalization connects the conflicts, but more importantly, our faith connects us with those who suffer. So, even here on the border with Ukraine, let us not forget the wars in other parts of the world, such as in Yemen, in Syria, and in Ethiopia. Every war must be seen as a failure of politics, and as St. John Paul said, a defeat for humanity. Because, as Francis wrote, war leaves our world worse than it was before. For this reason, our hearts must be moved by the tragedies endured by the civilians involved and must connect with the pain of the victims, refugees, orphans, and those who suffer mutilation in body and spirit, even if these are often considered an inevitable or collateral side effect of these events. When Jesus saw such suffering, his own insides were moved with pity. So this is a question for our conscience. How do we, as Christians or non-Christian citizens, as laity or clergy and hierarchy, contribute to peace in Europe? Are we showing love of neighbor? Are we influencing the European Union, NATO, and national governments to do so too? Conversely, How have we contributed and continue to contribute to war in Europe? Such an examination of conscience invites us to meditate on the violent history of the 20th century and the first 20 years of the 21st. The vocabulary and thinking of such an examen may be found in Fratelli Tutti in the paragraph on the injustices of war. Today, our prayer is insistent, again in the words of the Holy Father last Sunday. In the name of God, listen to the cry of those who suffer and put an end to the bombings and the attacks. Let there be real and decisive focus on the negotiations, and let the humanitarian corridors be effective and safe. In the name of God, I ask you, stop this massacre.
Ako posledná v rámci privítacích príhovorov sa nám teraz prihovorí pani prezidentka Slovenskej republiky, jej excelencia Zuzana Čaputová. Nech sa páči.
Ďakujem pekne. Vaše excelencie, eminencie, dámy a páni, dovolte, aby som vás privítala v Bratislave. Vážim si možnosť stretnúť sa s vami a prihovoriť sa vám. Pôvodne mali byť 3. Európske katolícke sociálne dni venované obnove spoločnosti po pandémii COVID-19. Medzi tým však do našich životov a do našich myslí a duší hlboko zasiahol vojenský konflikt v našom susedstve. Cítime smútok i hnev pri pohľade na nevinné obete vojny, prežívame strach, obavy z budúcnosti, no zároveň premýšľame, čo môžeme v tejto situácii urobiť, ako a čím vieme pomôcť. Naplnili sa slová, ktoré krátko pred ruskou inváziou na Ukrajinu vyslovil svätý otec František. Ľudstvo, ktoré sa píši tým, že napreduje vo vede, v myslení a v mnohých ďalších krásnych veciach, zaostáva v udržiavaní mieru. Moja generácia, hoci vyrastala v neslobode, žila v presvedčení, že bude vojnu poznať len z rozprávaní rodičov alebo starých rodičov. Mier, bezpečnosť a pokoj sme brali ako samozrejmú súčasť našich každodenných životov. Dnes sme konfrontovaní s poznaním, že sa životy miliónov ľudí môžu zmeniť v priebehu pár hodín a že sa svet môže v okamihu stať horším miestom pre život. V novej situácii si každý z nás hľadá svoju rolu, svoje poslanie. Týka sa to nás politikov, aj vás, cirkevných spoločenstiev. V tejto chvíli sa sústreďujeme na pomoc, solidaritu a súcit s trpiacimi, utekajúcimi a prenasledovanými. Som hrdá, že aj na Slovensku sa zdvihla obrovská vlna solidarity k Ukrajincom, ktorí u nás hľadajú bezpečie. Na ukrajinsko-slovenskej hranici, aj pred pár dňami na prijatí v prezidentskom paláci, som stretla mnohých dobrovoľníkov, Slovákov aj Ukrajincov, ktorí podávajú živé a autentické svedectvo o situácii, ktorej čelia. Som rada, že v prvej línii pomoci sú aj viaceré katolícke organizácie. Chcem využiť túto príležitosť na poďakovanie všetkým dobrovoľníkom, ale aj ich rodičom, učiteľom, katechétom či duchovným, ktorí mladých ľudí trpezlivo vedú k solidarite, porozumeniu a k skutočnej láske k bližnému. Odrazu vidíme, že vzhľadom na možnú dĺžku i vážnosť konfliktu naša ochota pomáhať nemôže byť len otázkou momentálnej eufórie, ale dlhodobým procesom, v ktorom nesmieme stratiť trpezlivosť a pokoru. Pandémia v nás dokázala zmobilizovať tieto kvality, povzbudiť našu spolupatričnosť. No rovnako v časti spoločnosti zasiala aj nevraživosť, plynúcu z existenčného tlaku, ale aj z politickej manipulácie. Dnes akoby chcel osud testovať našu pripravenosť znovu. Najmä ak vieme, že ekonomické dôsledky konfliktu budú citeľné dlho po jeho skončení. Utrpenie, ktoré postihlo Ukrajinu, nám pripomína známu pravdu, že mier nie je len absenciou vojny. Pojem mieru musí byť naplnený láskou, pochopením, toleranciou, teda obsahom vychádzajúcim z nás, z nášho srdca. V tom vidím veľkú príležitosť pre vaše spoločenstvo, ktoré šíri práve tieto hodnoty. Všetky mravné a duchovné kvality, ktoré v sebe dnes objavujeme a mobilizujeme, budeme nepochybne potrebovať aj v budúcnosti pri riešení ďalších problémov, ktoré nás čakajú. Vojna vypukla v okamihu, keď náš kontinent čelí viacerým vážnym a prepojeným výzvam, medzi ktoré patria klimatická kríza, starnutie populácie, zmeny na trhu práce či sociálne nerovnosti. Ako pripomína svätý otec František v encyklike Fratelli Tutti, sme svetové spoločenstvo, ktoré sa plaví na jednej lodi, kde utrpenie jedného spôsobuje újmu všetkým a nik sa nezachráni sám, zachrániť sa môžeme jedine spoločne. V ceste za touto víziou vidím naše spoločné poslanie. Ďakujem za pozornosť.
Ringrazio tutti gli interlocutori per le parole di saluto, di benvenuto e anche di indirizzo per i nostri lavori che continueranno adesso dopo la pausa che inizieremo fra poco nello spazio qui accanto alle porte di uscita dove possiamo fare un coffee break. Questa pausa durerà mezz'ora, quindi ci incontreremo qui alle 11:30. Continueremo con l'apertura dei lavori con 2 discorsi più specializzati alle tematiche delle giornate sociali. Vi auguro una buona pausa e fra mezz'ora, 11:30, ci ritroviamo qui nella sala.